Welcome to Gold Derby's Q&A panel on the making of Yellowstone. Today, I am delighted to introduce some of the artists working behind the scenes that bring this blockbuster show to life. So please join me in welcoming costume designer Johnetta Boone, production designer, art director Yvonne Boudreaux, editor Chad Galster A.C.E., makeup head department Greg Moon, hair department head Tim Muir, supervising sound editor Jay Nierenberg, and welcome everybody. So great to have you.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So look, before we get stuck into some of the really, interesting, fascinating details that each of you bring to this show, I just wanted to mention, and we were talking about this offline, Yellowstone is such a huge show. Everybody that I know seems to have either seen it or wants to see it or loves it. And I don't feel like any other show really has made the impact that has in the last few years as the #1 scripted show on TV. So season 5 so far has given us so much to talk about. And I have my favorite highlights. I was wondering what your highlight was from season 5, if you can think back. I know it's been a little while since you were in production, but it did air only 6 months ago. So it can't be that far into the distant memory. Who would like to go first? I mean, I've got plenty, but I want to save mine for the end. Go for it. Johnetta, tell me, what did you love most about season 5 so far?
Oh my gosh. There's so many parts about season 5 that are new for us. We've got new characters that have been introduced. We've got Summer, of course, is coming in a whole new way. We've got Sarah Atwood, who's a new character that's been introduced in a new, very tumultuous relationship. We have Beth on a horse this time, which is also quite fantastic and exciting. I think we've all been waiting for her to get on a horse and actually ride. And then we have, it's just so many moments, Rob. I don't even know where to start, honestly. The whole show has me gripped the entire time. And I'm, of course, there 16, 18 hours a day, every day. And when I watch the show, I'm still completely glued to my seat and engaged in all the moments. I love the way Summer and Beth's relationship took that turn. And then suddenly they became allies. And that is just so meaty and wonderful, because never would you imagine that your arch enemy and that someone that you had to battle with so hard would be someone that is sharing information with you that's life-changing, for the family and the ranch. So I just love how they came together, how Taylor wrote them, coming together as allies like that in a very surprising way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that fight that they have in episode 5, when
That was a long time coming. That was several seasons coming. That was a lot of fun to put together.
Yes.
Oh man, like that, and it's such a simple concept, and yet I just loved every second of
Best
that.
tooth falling out onto the dinner plate was another personal highlight for me.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm curious about how that was actually put together. But while we keep it general, who else has got a highlight from season 5 so far? There's a lot, I know.
Yeah. Well, from my end of it, the bar fight, the fight between, of course, Summer and Beth, being able to do those, the makeup aspect of it was a lot of fun. Taylor always seems to write something in every episode that gives us a good challenge, and it's fun to work on the show because of that.
Yeah,
it's not just your everyday type of thing. It's not just a drama,
No,
so.
It's so much more than that. Well, I want to get into some detail because otherwise we'll literally be here all day. And by the way, my favorite line even from the show in season 5 was when John Dutton coldly remarks that truth won't win the battle, but menace will. And I was like, that's really good writing. All right, so look, let's dive a little deeper. So Tim, Yellowstone obviously is an epic rural neo-Western, but it is also so thoroughly modern and present day in its overall aesthetic. So I'm curious about, what does that mean for the designers on the show, particularly yourself in the hair department? How do those two elements of the show inform how you're going to approach the hair on the show?
So for me,
I basically, because I've been on since season 1, so for me, creating these characters looks, as far as their hair goes, is basically just kind of their personalities, like what they do. I mean, you've got Casey that's a little more of a free spirit, so he's, you know, he's not cut, he's shaggy, he's a little more of that Legends of the Fall kind of and then you have Beth, which is sometimes super put together but a hot mess all at once. So I mean, and she's got a lot of pain and a lot of hidden, so like you never see her without, you know, a heavy bang or hair around her face. It's more of like a hidden kind of look. Even when her hair's up, it's still strategically where you just see her like from her eyes. And and then you've got Wes, which is Jamie. He's always so put together, and he's, you know, he in the beginning he started off as this pet for his dad, that he always wanted to please his dad, and so every hair had to be in place, and even from his tie to his I mean, everything you see, I mean, I'm sure, Johnetta, you see the same way. Like, he's just so like staunchy, and then as it goes on, he starts to, I mean, you see his hair's a little more messy, and he's a little more, you know, coming into his own, and that. And then, you know, Monica, like for this season, her tragedy she's had happen, and culturally, you know, what that means for her cutting her hair and all of that stuff, is kind of how I go with those looks on the show.
I just love it when designers explain how you're making these very nuanced changes or applications that are going to really impact the character's internal turmoil, or just, you know, internal emotional state. We, the audience, don't even really notice it, but we must, because it's all kind of coming into our, you know, our eyes through the little things that you guys are doing, which I find so interesting. So like Greg, for example, there's so much that makeup artists do when it comes to making a character look how they feel. But then I was also remembering episode 1 of season 5, a heavily pregnant Monica barely survives a car crash. And that's really sad and horrifying for the characters. But I reckon it's probably a great day for the makeup artists, because they get to maybe apply some stuff that they don't normally have to do. So can you talk me through the most realistic injuries on TV and how you make that happen?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of research. I've got a great special effects makeup artist in Abigail Steele, and I coordinate with her on the extensive looks. A lot of Kelly's looks are what Abigail puts together on it. We look at each character, the way Taylor's written them, and basically try to make them real, whether it's a little heavy makeup look or just a very generic makeup look. Always trying not to overdo it. To me, makeup shouldn't draw attention to itself unless it has to. So the fight scenes, yeah, there's stuff that has to be done there to draw attention to that. But each character, I mean, between Tim, Johnetta, I mean, it's really important that we give that look to make each one of those characters real. So yeah. I like to look and see what Johnetta has them dressed in. I like to see what Tim does with the hair, and then we try to coordinate all that to make each one of these characters come to life. And
so they become relatable, like all about being.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of think that we've done that on this show. Jonetta's done an amazing job with the wardrobe. I love the hairstyles that Tim comes up with for each of these characters. And then that makes my job a lot easier as far as, you know, the look that I'm going to give to those characters. So,
yeah. And well, speaking of Johnetta, you mentioned there was a lot of scope for new design and thinking about new characters. I was thinking straight up, like Josh Lucas makes a return to the series in flashbacks. I always love those, the younger versions of certain characters. And it got me thinking then, so what opportunities do perhaps the flashbacks present for you and the design team at large? Because that's a whole new palette, right? It's they're not the same characters we're used to seeing.
Well, it's very interesting when you're doing the flashbacks. I mean, we flashed all the way back to 1889 last year.
Yeah.
Which introduced the whole series, 1883. So we I work really hard. We work together to bring some sense of community and organization in thought, as well as continuity with the actors and the characters. A lot of times, when Josh comes to us, when he shows up, he's not connected really to the characters because he isn't there quite as often. So I'll share things with him that Kevin does when he's portraying JD, and it's super, it assists him in a great way to then bring that character in. In addition to that, I work really hard with bringing Kevin's look, bringing it back to the 90s when Josh is playing the young JD, so that there is some continuity and flavor in the whole movement of their costumes. They wear the same, listen, the jeans that JD wears and the denim pieces, he's been wearing, they're double RL. He's been wearing double RL, has been making jeans for almost as long as Levi's, at least stylistically, right? So it's so in the 90s, Josh can wear that young JD look. It's just maybe not quite as upscale as the pieces that he wears now, because this is earlier in his life. So we bring the color palette back to the 90s. We connect the two of them together, and that's what we work really hard on, is keeping them together, closely connected, so that there's nothing lost in the translation between the timeline. Because sometimes when we're filming, it's so close together, you almost can't tell, especially in rural Montana. Not much has changed since the 90s. So we have to keep it real. We're like, oh my gosh, this house has been here since 1899, right? So we have to keep it, and the audience otherwise doesn't know what the time frame is. So we have to we have to work really hard to make sure that we are translating Taylor's vision and telling that story. And we did the same thing with young Beth. We kept her in, she's a sassy pants, right? So we kept her sassy as young Beth. We kept her in the micro prairie florals. We kept her in low cut pieces, so that, when she's at that bar, when she's saying, he says, do you have ID? And she says, yes, I have. It's all very in keeping with who Beth is. And then with young Rip, the same thing. It's the same tonality without putting him in black, because now Rip, of course, wears all black because he is such a tragic
that's
past.
right.
But I put young Rip in browns, in the deeper tones, to support that transition into him being in black. And so it all works with color. It works with the tone of the color. It works with fabric textures and everything. And then I love, Yvonne, when she builds that world as the production designer, then we all seamlessly come together to mature and what I call marinate that world, so that we're all sort of massaging the same vibe, the same look. You should see us. We're like all together, like at a family meeting. It'll be Tim and Greg and Abby and Yvonne, and we're just all sitting together, just talking about what we're doing and how it's going to translate the actors into the characters.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's the way that it all comes together. It is beautiful. This is not a show that you can watch while you're looking at your phone. You've got to pay attention.
Yeah.
And the flashbacks interest me, Yvonne. Every season the art department gets told, all right, this is what we need you to build. We've got some new sets, we've got some new looks, and you've also got to go back in time. So like what Johnetta was saying, I mean, there must be a lot of nuanced tweaks that you're doing to the sets to give it that older feel, but we, the audience, are really just only kind of noticing it if we maybe watch it really carefully, right?
Oh yes, I mean, every set gets augmented. Taylor, this season especially, wanted a very sunset, warm tone over everything. So that led to every set was painted. The paint department worked their tail off, getting in there, painting almost every single set. And the flashback too, not only did we warm that up and bring in warm tones with wood paneling, we also, tobacco stained and yellowed electronics, because like Jonetta's saying, Montana in the 90s, I was like, that's really 80s, 70s. They don't have this upgrade as much, because we were walking to places that actually had stuff from the 90s. So we got to pick it back some more. So this year in particular, we're coming off of season 4, and we shot that during 2020. And so it was a very outdoor season. So Taylor hit us hard on this season, and it was interior, massive crowds, massive 2 inaugurations, not 1, but 2. And and I don't know how Johnetta did it, and Tim. And I mean, it was just a lot. It was a lot in the beginning, and I just know that it's great. It keeps you hot. I'd rather just keep going. But yeah.
I mean, it would be horrifying if you were told by Taylor at the beginning, well, there's not much for you to do this year, so just sit back. And I mean, that's not going to happen. So
that has never happened to any of us.
I can't
It's not that
imagine
kind of party.
No. Chad, you've got a lot of experience working with Taylor. You've worked on some of his other shows, and I was thinking, I would just love you to talk us through a particular sequence. For example, when Beth says to Summer, "Step outside, let's have a little chat," and then it becomes a complete utter free for all, which I just live for and want to see over and over again. That's because I need to get out. Chad, talk us through the editing of something like that, because that could have gone really wrong had it not been edited to perfection.
Thank you. Look, the beauty of episodic television is that, as I said, kind of hinted at earlier, that fight's been brewing for a long time. So our audience has known it's coming since around season 4. At some point, the gaskets were going to blow and these 2 were going to get at it. So you have a lot of anticipation in the audience built up. So that does a lot of the work for you, and just the excitement of people. Oh yes, I want to see this. And Taylor's great about paying off things that we've taken a season or 2 or 4 to set up. So for that fight in particular, the instruction really was it should be brutal, but not like horrifying. Like it should be actually entertaining to watch this fight. But the punches, when those punches land, it feels like you've been hit in the face. And Jay and his team did an excellent job designing the sound for that. So we kept it very much in the realm of the real as far as the actual physical brutality. And even in the score, when we were looking at the piece of score that was going to be written for that, and I work with the composers, very directly, and Taylor does as well. It was like, this should be entertaining, but not campy. So we had to ride that line between, it's a fun thing that we've been looking forward to. No one's really going to get hurt. No one's going to die as a result of this fight. And that's known going in. And there's so much comedy that leads up to the moment of the fight, and there's actually additional comedy that comes in the aftermath of the fight. Like I said, the tooth falling out and some of the things that they say to each other. So as with a lot of things in Yellowstone, balancing that line, making sure that it feels real and authentic, acknowledging the entertainment value in it, but making it, being true to the experience of these characters, which for them, it was a very, emotional and violent and very difficult thing to go through. You can't. The actors were fantastic. I mean, you realize, as all of us are talking, you can't talk about any of our jobs without talking about 300, 400, 100 other people who are doing their jobs at an incredibly high level. And so I start thinking about how it looked. I start thinking about what the costumes were like. I think about what the make was like. I think about the cast and all of their work. I think about the sound team. So anyway, a lot of things come together, but my specific part of it was that. It was really just trying to ride that line between entertainment and brutality.
Yeah, and I think, Jay, you probably would have a similar aesthetic that you're thinking about. A lot of how fights impact us is through sound. That we're not completely aware of it, it's happening at the time, but it really does impact us viscerally. So then talk me through the importance of your role in really giving a scene like that and other scenes like in the bar that really impacts the audience.
Yeah, sure. I can remember asking Chad, so are we going to approach this? How real do you want it? How painful do you want those punches to sound? And I think where we landed was perfect, but it's hard sometimes to find just the right spot. A little too much over the top, and you're going to lose your audience. It's going to maybe seem too cliche or too comedic or too Hollywood, and not enough, and it's not going to have the impact that you want it to have, and so it is sometimes tricky to find that sweet spot.
If all of us aren't careful, it can be campy, and that's what I think
Exactly.
Jay and
Yeah.
his team did well, and that's what everyone here is always just making sure that we're making, as you say, realism, real. That's the word that we all talk about all the time. The show needs to feel real.
Yeah, and the story needs to be told without veering off the path. You have to stay on the trail, so to speak.
Because it could have been quite a funny scene, actually. Just
Yeah,
played for comedy. The tone could have been all off, and maybe it still would have worked. But I just felt the way that transition from the dining table, where there was some really funny zingers to that on the field or outside. That it actually turned out to be pretty horrifying, even though I was really happy about.
And this is one of the things that Yellowstone does so brilliantly, in my opinion, is that sort of back and forth being playful, but also being incredibly brutal in a way that really hits you, really makes it as compelling as it is. It's not one or the other. It's often both, which I think is kind of a miraculous place to land for a show like this. It's impressive.
And Jay, how do you interact with the rest of the sound team and even the composers, and just to bring the show's kind of sonic landscape, if you want to put it that way, because there's so many different aspects to it, isn't there?
There is, and as far as the composers go, I consider one of my first missions is to stay out of the way of the music, because the music is so brilliant.
It is.
I only want to help it. I only want to do what needs to be done to make sure that it all works together seamlessly. I'm a relative newcomer to Yellowstone. I joined them this season. And so I also needed to be careful to be faithful to what has been established in a way that's important to the show, that makes Yellowstone what it is, but also being charged with bringing my own creativity and my own voice to it as well. Don't be afraid to try things, is what I was told, and that's always nice to hear. And we did. We tried some things, and I think we did some really cool things, especially in the world of transitions. One of the things that I try to do, especially with shows like this that are mostly realistic, is to try to help the story along by doing interesting things with the transition sound wise. We played around with the absence of sound quite a bit at times, which I thought was really successful. At the swearing in ceremony, for instance, I think was actually one of my favorite parts, certainly of that episode, Chad. And the other thing that I really started to fall in love with sound wise with Yellowstone was really drilling down on the detail of things when it comes to their lives, when it comes to cowboy life. The sounds of the saddles creaking, the sound of the dirt, and the sound of the wildlife, the vastness of where they live and work. It's sometimes hard to match the visual. The visual is so beautiful, but you want to try to enhance that with something that sounds really big and expansive and beautiful, but also at times is going to be very sparse, by design.
Yeah.
And important to find those balances,
Yeah, it is such a balancing act, and I mean, it could go also wrong if you're not in the right hands. And
exactly.
And I think the sound on this show is so amazing. And you're right, there are those silences. That swearing in episode 1 was just chef's kiss, and a lot of that is kind of you pulling back maybe and just being a little bit more nuanced with the way it's coming across.
Yeah, you don't always want to be balls to the wall with the sound. You really want to pick your spots and sort of let the story breathe without, sometimes you don't really need to help it that much.
That's right.
Yeah.
Going back to, putting the show together at the beginning, as opposed to someone like Jay or Chad, who starts to get involved slightly more later on. And I'm talking generalities, of course, but Tim, when you begin on a new season, there will inevitably be new characters, as I mentioned to Johnetta. And I'm thinking straight up on Jackie Weaver. She was in the show in the earlier season as Market Equity CEO Carolyn Warner. But I like her look and the look of like someone like Sarah Atwood, played beautifully by Dawn Olivieri. So different to what we're used to on the Dutton Ranch, you know, in the corporate world. So was that exciting for you to really lean into that?
It was. Designing Carolyn's look, when we first saw her and she comes in, as you can see, she's very, very put together. That bob is very, very clean, very white, just she knows who she is, and she doesn't ask questions. She's just who she is. I think the crazy thing is like when we brought in Sarah Atwood this year, and bringing back Carolyn, she comes back in and she sees that everything she's trying, like if you'll remember in season 4, she sits down with Beth and she says, I used to be you. I know what kind of person you are. And so, she tries to scare Beth. And of course, Beth is like, I'm not intimidated by you. Because she's still in herself, And so I think when she comes and she sees that none of the attempts that she has tried is working, she brings somebody in as a rival to Beth that's a bit more like her. She's a bit more where she's in between Carolyn and Beth. She's put together, but she's a little more rough around the edges like Beth is still. And I think that was to kind of throw Beth off a little bit and try to, give her a run for her money. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's so true, because Carolyn, I was intimidated by her hair. Like she's like, that Bob of Steel and, Jackie Weaver, she's one of the great, she's a national treasure. She gives those steely looks. Sarah Atwood's completely different. Sarah Atwood is sexy and she's got this whole kind of, maybe she's doesn't have your best interest at heart, but she's just so engaging that you just want to kind of spend time with her. And so I think a lot of that has to do with the look. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so interesting to me. And then so Johnetta, you get to dress people like that. So we're not just thinking about, on horseback or on the ranch. We're talking about then as well in the corporate world, in Helena, Bozeman, or wherever they are. So Johnetta, talk me through that particular dynamic, because that's a whole new look for the show that you're probably not really that used to.
Yeah, well, for that particular show, yes. The thing is, I coming from an environment where I'm surrounded by corporate America, it's an easy transition for me. In addition to that, I live in the DC area, which is totally governmental, right? Yeah. So, but for this show, it's for me, having that level of diversity with the power and the strength are two completely different things. Because most times when you see the level of Sarah Atwood's strength walk in the door, they're in power suits, they're tight, there's nothing sexy about them at all. They just walk in and they're all about business. And when they walk in the door that they're going to kick your butt. Well, in her entry, you don't feel that at all, because her skirt's a bit higher, much higher than it would normally be coming out of corporate America. Her hair is tossed and much sexier. Even her makeup is soft, yet it's intentional. So we kept on that thread. And Dawn, of course, is fantastic. She's a model. You put anything on her and it just completely speaks itself, but she also embraces it 100%. So when we were working with pieces with her, it was important Taylor loves seeing a woman. So having cleavage is no issue for him, even if you're in that particular power position, because Caroline bring in Sarah Atwood, right? Yeah. And then John says, "Are you sure?" And she said, and he says, she says, "Yes, I'm sure." And then she comes in and you're expecting, because before her was Willa Hayes. So you're expecting more of that. And then she comes in and she's not that at all. So she throws you off a little bit, but you do know that it's going to be a seductive killing that's happening. Yeah. Not so much by the book and the power. So she gets you that way. Then we loosened her up a little bit when they were at the Deerfield Club, and she's softer, but yet her colors make her stronger, because red's always a very dynamic and aggressive color. So
Yeah.
instead of using red so that you would know that she was going for the jugular, I used the Bordeaux, which is like, it makes you want to drink wine, right? So that's what they did. They went to the bar, they got into it a little bit, they got very happy, and then they went off into the men's lounge and got to it. So it's all those things. It's a play of color, it's a play of texture, it's a play of style, it's the movement of the fabric. When she goes back into Jamie's office, and she has that snap front knit dress, which is very professional, although it could be taken as being a little bit meek, because who wears a snap front knit dress? Not anyone who's going to come and snap it off in front of you, right?
But you're thinking it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And
So it's
that's the key.
Yes.
See, this character is so fascinating to me because she is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so much of that is about her look. That hair, I just feel like it probably takes such a long time to get it right, and yet she made it look like as if she just got out of bed.
Yeah.
And then the clothing, the makeup, she's soft, but you know she's going to eviscerate you. She's very beguiling. So Greg, talk me through, firstly, that character, but also you do a lot of the same thing with Beth, depending on where she's at in her emotional journey. So Greg, talk me through that, please.
Well, I mean, if you've been listening, the thing that's interesting me is listening to everyone else and their contributions here. Taylor writes for a smart audience. He doesn't take the audience as being stupid or anything, and neither do we. So the characters that he writes, he writes these smart characters. And so we have to put thought into those characters to make sure that they're real so that the audience believes them. And then you enjoy that journey that each of them take. So be it Dawn playing, her look, be it Beth playing her look, and Beth has several different looks and stuff. It just depends on what she's going out in or going after as far as that look. So I look at the characters. There's a difference between the bunkhouse boys, between the family themselves, and then of course you've got the corporate world. You've got the Native Americans, and so we're trying to make each of these characters, these people, look real to the audience, so that they believe it. And again, if people aren't noticing that they're wearing makeup, I think that my job's done. If the people look real, again, there's certain times where it's important for that to draw attention to itself, but it lends to the story that's being told there. So this collaboration between everything, if these characters look real, if people are enjoying the moment, then we've done our job.
I interviewed Kelly Riley a while ago, and I had the fortune of her doing the interview with the scar on her face. And I wondered, like, is that something that she just turns up every day on set and it's like, all right, let's just get that scar done straight away before we move on to anything? I was like, how does that? It's got to be like on the sheet, so it's reminded and get that scar.
Well, there's so much for us because we don't shoot. I mean, we're shooting all over the place. Episodes, we've got dual episodes going on. We're jumping back from episode 1 to episode 10 to episode 5. And there were some days where we were doing 2 episodes in one day type of a thing. So the first thing I usually try to do is map out the fight sequences, the looks that we have for the show. So everything's mapped out on a piece of paper. And then I check with my team to make sure that everything's coordinated there, so that on the day we're looking down and we're looking to see, okay, Beth has a scar here, Monica has a black eye here, she has a, so those things are important so that that we're not caught up in an issue with continuity. So so absolutely. Beth comes in, she's there's days where Abby's got her scar on, she's got to put that big scar on her back. So sometimes some of Beth's makeup takes quite a while to do. And then, then she goes over into hair and then she comes back to makeup. So there's a lot that goes on there with it.
And it's got to be consistent. I mean, I can't imagine if you're someone like Chad editing this and there's so many problems with continuity, I would go mad. Is that a fair assessment, Chad? That
it's rarely a problem. I mean, I love listening to everyone talk about the jobs that they're doing so much, because you can hear how much thought and care and attention everyone puts into their craft. I mean, I think there are fewer continuity problems on Yellowstone than almost anything I've ever worked on. I can tell you that. And I think when I was sitting here listening to everyone and thinking, like, we've had the good fortune of being on the show that's had a long life, hopefully a longer life to come. It's become very popular, but everyone here knows that if it doesn't grow and change, it dies. Anything that doesn't grow and change dies. And so everyone here is intent on making sure that they're always moving it forward. You can just hear how much thought everyone's putting: costumes, hair, production design, makeup, sound, everything. So when you have the people that are giving you that attention to detail just in their creative work, you can't help but get most of the stuff right, just in a kind of like nuts and bolts thing. And if there's an occasional continuity error, and if that stops someone enjoying the show, then we probably didn't have them to begin with, for the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, I'll
people are with you.
With your work, Yvonne, look, for example, I was talking to another production designer, and they said one of the big fears for a production designer is not moving past the inherent artifice of what you're doing. So you have to make it look lived in and real and appropriate. And so how challenging is that on a show like Yellowstone? Because I imagine it would be, you've got so many sets to work with.
Well, I have an amazing team, number one, amazing team. And we are spread out across 70 miles. Sets can happen in Darby all the way down to Sula, which is almost to Idaho, and then all the way up to Missoula. So it is a journey. But yes, we divide and conquer. We're very organized, and the set deck team does a really, really beautiful job of, we have high end, like you were talking about with Johnetta, and we go high end. And then we also, have some fun bar scenes. We had a lot of bar scenes this year, modern day and flashback. And yeah, it's just layers and layers and layers. And Taylor writes in the script. He puts a lot in his first step descriptions when he introduces a new set, and those are our guidelines, and we have to hit every mark. And I think we've all been saying this. It's real. We have to have you have to be believable, and it's authentic. I think Taylor is so authentic to Yellowstone, and it definitely comes out in the characters and in the details and in the moments, especially with the horses and the cattle and the fields. We go out there. Sometimes I say I'm a glorified fence company, because I'm either taking a fence down or putting a fence up. Learned a lot about fences in Montana. But when I send Taylor moments and research, I have those moments in there with the connection of the barbed wire on the wood. It's just making sure we cross every T and dot every I.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And Jay, finally, with a show that is so involved with livestock and horseback riding, how difficult have you found it coming onto this show to balance the needs of ADR and dialogue, and then also those external shots on horseback?
Well, I think that, first of all, before I forget to say it, I want to say that I love what Greg just said about, if we're all doing our jobs really well, nobody notices.
Yeah.
It's so true.
100%.
And you know what I'm talking about, all of you, I'm sure. And it's I guess I could apply that a little bit to try to answer your question about all that other stuff too, because one of the things that we tried really, really hard to do this season was to fix the dialogue, as opposed to just going, that doesn't sound too good, let's ADR it. Because if you can save what the actors did originally, which is 99% of the time the best you're going to get in those moments, because they're so well created by all of us to begin with, and the actors, that's what you want. You don't want to replace stuff, unless you absolutely have to, story wise, if you have to change a line, if you're missing something that's vital. But boy, we one of the things we worked really hard on was saving the dialogue, which sometimes can require an amazing amount of surgery, which of course, an audience watching it, the final product at home, is never going to know. They're just going to know if they can't understand a line, or if something pops out because there's a lot of sound on it. So we worked really hard to avoid shooting ADR. One of the things I'm particularly proud of, actually, and you know, in terms of the balance of the sound, yeah, I mean, there are these scenes with, you know, 1,000 cattle and, you know, 20, 30 horses and cowboys. And if you literally put the sound of everything in there, which we often will build out anyway, just in case, you know, it's never going to work, because you have to hear what they're saying as well, you know, and
Right.
you also want there to be room for the music, because that's really driving the story as well. And a lot of these big scenes where you have all of this cattle and all these horses and all this action, so it's a dance, you know.
Yeah,
We would do these huge builds, you know, we would literally have hundreds and hundreds of tracks of sound to cover as much as what you're seeing on screen as possible. But then at the end of the day, it was about making the right choices as to what you're going to hear in the mix. And I think we do that, you know, I mean, that's part of what we do, in an effort so that nobody notices what we do. At the end of the day, they just enjoy watching the story, and they hear the things that need to be heard to be sure that they stay in it and it feels real, but that nothing's missed, you know. Not a word, not an emotion, you know, all that stuff.
Nothing. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it's beautiful work. We've run out of time, everyone, but I just want you all to know that as a fan, speaking on behalf of the fandom, hurry up and start making season 5's part 2, because I'm getting impatient. What's going on? Hurry up.
If only it were up to us.
Yeah.
But I know that you're all working on it, and this, you know, still in the writer's room, and hopefully we'll get some new episodes before we know it, in a blink of an eye, because we are just on the edge of our seat after those war of words between Beth and Jamie.
Yes.
That's going to get ugly, and Dawn's involved, as Sarah Atwood. So I'm all for it. Thank you everyone for your time today. You make the best show on TV. We're so grateful for all your artistry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Robert. Thank you.
Nice seeing you guys.
Yes, wonderful to
Likewise.
see you.
Good seeing you too.